I can't believe I'm telling you this, but today, my life changed forever in just 5 minutes. Those words replayed in my mind like a broken record as I stared at the polished wooden door across from me. The CEO's office. Normally, this was a place I tried to avoid unless absolutely necessary. But today, it was unavoidable. I had worked at Bright Tech Solutions for nearly 7 years. 7 years of late nights, missed family dinners, weekends spent troubleshooting code or finalizing reports no one else wanted to touch. I had been proud of my work ethic, proud of my loyalty. I believed that dedication mattered. I believed that results mattered. And yet, as I took a deep breath and knocked lightly, I felt a knot in my stomach that refused to untangle. "Come in," the voice said.
Calm.
Controlled. But there was an edge to it that made my chest tighten. I opened the door to find Mr. Caldwell, the CEO, sitting behind his enormous mahogany desk, his expression unreadable. Normally, he had a sharp grin and a joking tone, but now he looked different. Tired. Pensive. Almost sad, though that was hard to believe coming from him. "Sit down," he said, gesturing toward the leather chair in front of his desk. I obeyed without a word, suddenly aware of how small the office felt, how the walls seemed to close in. There was a long pause. One of those silences that doesn't feel like a pause at all. It feels like the universe has stopped spinning for just a moment. My fingers fidgeted with the pen I had in my hand. My mind raced. Had I done something wrong? Missed a deadline? Overlooked a critical email? Then he spoke. "I'm going to be direct," he said. "We've decided to let you go." The words landed like a punch to the gut. Let me go. Fired. Terminated. My vision blurred for a second, not with tears, but with disbelief. Surely this was a mistake. I don't understand. I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I've been here 7 years. I've always met my targets. I've stayed late when needed. He held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "It's not about your performance. You've been an excellent employee. That's why this is so difficult." My throat tightened. If it wasn't performance, then what? I searched his face for an explanation, for some hint, some clue that would make sense of this sudden, devastating verdict. But there was nothing. Just his eyes, heavy with a seriousness I had never seen before. "This is a business decision," he continued, his tone carefully measured. "Restructuring. Changes in leadership. Financial priorities. I know this is abrupt, and I wish it could have been handled differently. But your position, it's no longer available." I sat there, numb. Restructuring? Financial priorities? Those words sounded hollow, almost absurd against the years I had poured into the company. I thought of my daughter, waiting at home for dinner I wouldn't make. I thought of my mortgage, my bills, the little things that relied on my paycheck. I wanted to argue. I wanted to beg. I wanted to scream. But all I could do was nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course, we'll provide a severance package," he added, as if that would make it any better. "And we'll help with the transition. You'll have 2 weeks to wrap things up. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to process what just happened. 2 weeks to realize that the career I had built so painstakingly was being ripped away from me, seemingly without reason." As I stood to leave, Mr. Caldwell's voice stopped me again. "I know this is hard. I didn't want it to be this way." There was something in his tone, something more than corporate obligation. A hint of regret, almost guilt. I didn't know what to make of it. All I could do was nod, forcing a smile that felt like it had cracked in the middle. Walking out of that office, the hallway felt colder than I remembered. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me like an ominous warning. Colleagues passed by, unaware, or maybe pretending not to notice, the storm inside me. I kept my head down, but inside my mind was racing. How could this happen? Why me? 7 years. 7 years of loyalty. And for what? By the time I reached the elevator, I realized I wasn't just walking toward the doors, I was stepping into uncertainty. My heart pounded as I imagined what awaited me at home, explaining this to my family, facing the questions, the worry, the fear in my wife's eyes, the tears my daughter might shed. And yet, as I pressed the button for the lobby, I felt a flicker of something strange. A sense that this wasn't the end. That perhaps, somehow, this moment, so crushing, so devastating, was leading me somewhere I couldn't yet see.
I didn't know it then.
I had no idea that the person I had just left behind in that office, the CEO himself, was quietly watching, his own expression unreadable, before slipping out of the building and into the car that would follow me home. I never imagined that a simple walk home could change everything. That thought haunted me as I stepped out of Bright Tech Solutions, my briefcase feeling heavier than it had ever been. The city streets stretched before me, glowing under the harsh glare of streetlights, each one casting long, lonely shadows. My mind raced, replaying every word from the CEO's office, twisting them over and over like a knife in my gut. Business decision, a restructuring, financial priorities. It all sounded so calculated, so cold. I walked slowly, letting my feet carry me forward while my thoughts spun out of control. How could someone fire me without warning, without explanation? I had given everything to that company. Every ounce of effort, every sleepless night, every missed weekend with my family. And for what? A corporate decision that reduced me to a number, a name on a termination sheet? The usual sights of my neighborhood, kids playing in the park, couples laughing under cafe lights, neighbors chatting on porches, felt surreal. It was as if I was moving through a world that no longer belonged to me. Every laugh, every casual smile, felt like a reminder of what I had lost. And then, I noticed something. At first, I thought it was my imagination. A shadow moving behind me, subtle, quiet, like a figure who didn't want to be noticed. I stopped and glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the empty street. I shook my head. I'm just paranoid, I told myself. Fired employees are supposed to be paranoid. But when I took a few more steps, the feeling returned, stronger this time. The shadow seemed closer, moving when I moved, pausing when I paused. My pulse quickened. Could it be someone following me? My first instinct was to turn around, confront them. But something made me hesitate. A flicker of recognition, maybe? I slowed my pace, trying to appear casual. The street ahead was quiet, almost eerily so, with only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a dog breaking the silence. My mind raced with possibilities. A mugger? A stalker? Or could it be him? Mr. Caldwell? The CEO? Why would he follow me? What could he possibly want? I took another step, then another, my heart thundering in my chest. And then I saw it, a sleek black car parked a little down the block. At first, I dismissed it, but as I continued walking, the car moved slowly, mirroring my pace. My breath caught in my throat. It couldn't be a coincidence. Why would the CEO follow me home? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he forgot something, or perhaps it was a security concern. But the deeper, more unsettling thought lingered. What if this wasn't just about the company? What if this was about me? I quickened my pace, my shoes clicking sharply against the pavement. The streets were familiar, yet tonight they seemed alien, almost hostile. Every corner, every shadow seemed to hold a question I wasn't ready to answer. And yet, a strange curiosity pulled me forward, whispering that this encounter, whatever it was, might change everything. As I turned onto a quieter street, my apartment building came into view. Relief washed over me, mixed with fear. Finally, I'd be home, safe in the presence of my family, away from the cold, corporate world. And yet, the black car followed, inching forward silently. My pulse accelerated. I reached my building and fumbled with my keys, glancing over my shoulder. The car had stopped a few yards back, engine off, yet the driver was visible, seated upright, watching. And then, to my disbelief, the figure behind the wheel stepped out. It was him, Mr. Caldwell, the CEO. I froze. My mind screamed 1,000 questions. Why? What does he want? Did I do something wrong? But before I could speak, he called out, his voice surprisingly calm, almost human. Wait, he said, taking a careful step toward me. I know this looks strange. I needed to talk to you. I stared at him, disbelief etched across my face. After the humiliation of being fired, after the sudden collapse of the life I thought was secure, here was the man responsible, following me home, asking for a conversation as if nothing had happened. And yet, despite my fear and confusion, something in his eyes stopped me from turning away. There was no anger, no dominance, no cold corporate facade. There was hesitation, regret, something I didn't understand. I realized then that this night, this walk home that I had dreaded, was far from over. Something was about to unfold, something I couldn't have anticipated even in my wildest fears. And in that moment, the world felt like it had narrowed to just the two of us, me, the man I had trusted and admired, now a stranger who had turned my life upside down, and him, the CEO, standing in the street. When he finally stopped me on the sidewalk, my heart almost stopped too. I froze in place as Mr. Caldwell took a slow, deliberate step closer. The streetlights reflected off his polished shoes, the black car parked silently behind him. My mind raced. This can't be real. This can't be happening. He raised a hand, not in threat, but in a strange gesture of peace. "I know this looks bad," he said, his voice low, careful, almost hesitant. "And I understand if you hate me right now." Hate him? I swallowed hard. Hate felt like too small a word for the storm of emotions raging inside me. Shock, betrayal, confusion, anger, and somewhere beneath it all, a sliver of curiosity I couldn't explain. Why would he be here? Why now? I don't even know what to say, I admitted, my voice shaking. "You don't have to say anything yet," he replied, a faint frown creasing his forehead. "Just listen. Please." I hesitated, my hands gripping my briefcase so tightly that my knuckles whitened. But there was something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years of working under him, that made me stop. A vulnerability, raw and unexpected. He took another step closer, keeping a respectful distance. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. You deserved better than how I handled this." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard correctly. A mistake?" "Yes," he said, almost pleading. "You've been one of the most loyal, hardworking people I've ever had in this company. And yet, I let my judgment get clouded. I didn't consider the bigger picture, or your life. I focused on numbers and restructuring, and I forgot something important. People. You." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Part of me wanted to turn and walk away, but my feet remained rooted to the sidewalk. The words he spoke were shocking, almost unbelievable. And yet, they rang with a sincerity I couldn't ignore. "I don't understand," I whispered. "If I did so much, if this is a mistake, then why fire me?" He sighed, looking away for a moment, as if gathering the right words. "There's been a lot happening behind the scenes, decisions I had to make that weren't easy, decisions that didn't reflect your performance at all. And when it came time to cut positions, yours was on the list. I didn't handle it the way I should have. I should have talked to you first. I should have explained. I should have shown you respect." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. Years of loyalty, of dedication, suddenly met with an apology I never expected to hear from him. "And now," he continued, his voice quiet, almost vulnerable, "I'm here because I need to fix this. I don't know if I can undo everything, but I owe you the truth. And I owe you a chance." I stared at him, searching for any hint of manipulation, any hidden agenda. But there was nothing. Just honesty. Just a man, my CEO, the person who had just turned my life upside down, standing in the middle of the street, owning up to his mistake. "Chance?" I asked cautiously. "What kind of chance?" He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "A chance to stay. To work with me. Not because of your job title, not because of some corporate hierarchy, but because I value you. Because I finally realized that your dedication, your integrity, those things can't be measured by spreadsheets or quarterly reports. They matter more than anything else." I felt a strange mix of disbelief and relief. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. The anger, the confusion, the fear, they all collided, creating a whirlwind inside me. "You're serious?" I managed to whisper. He nodded. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. And if you choose to forgive me, to trust me again, I promise things will be different. You've earned that much." For a long moment, silence stretched between us. The city seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us standing in the cold glow of the streetlights. I looked into his eyes and saw something I had never noticed before, a man humbled by his own decisions, willing to admit when he was wrong. I realized then that this wasn't just about a job or about being fired. This was about respect, trust, and the human side of leadership, a side I had almost forgotten existed. And in that quiet moment, I understood something else, too. Sometimes, the people we least expect are the ones who can teach us the most, not with lessons from a book, but with courage, honesty, and the willingness to admit they were wrong. I nodded slowly, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease, just a little. "All right," I said. "I'm listening." And just like that, the walk home, the fear, the uncertainty, the shadow of loss, was transformed into a moment of possibility, one that would change the trajectory of both our lives forever. What I learned that night changed my life forever. We stood on the quiet street, the city buzzing faintly around us, but it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. Mr. Caldwell's eyes, once so sharp and commanding in the office, now held something else, something human, vulnerable, almost desperate. He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to share what had been locked away behind corporate walls. "I need to explain why I did what I did," he began. "And it's not easy to say." I listened silently, gripping my briefcase like a lifeline. After everything, after the shock and humiliation, my mind was ready for confrontation, for anger. But instead, I found myself curious. "There's been turmoil at the top," he continued. "Departments shifting, budgets slashed, leadership changes. But it's more than that. The company was in trouble, more trouble than I realized until recently. I had to make decisions fast, and I made a terrible one." My heart thudded. "You mean my position?" "Yes," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "You were never the problem. You've been one of the most reliable, competent, and ethical people I've ever had the privilege to work with. But in the chaos of decisions, reports, and deadlines, I failed to see your true value. I failed to see you." I took a step back, trying to process his words. All these months, no, all these years, I had given everything to this company, and now he was telling me it wasn't about my work at all? That he had been blind to it? I don't know what to say," I admitted. "You don't need to say anything," he replied quickly. "Just hear me out. When I made the decision to let you go, I thought it was necessary. But as soon as I left the office, something didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the company rules, the policies, or the financial reports. It was you. Your dedication. Your integrity. The way you always put people first. I realized that letting you go would be a mistake that could haunt me personally, not just professionally." His honesty struck me like a lightning bolt. For the first time, I saw the man behind the suit and title, a human being capable of error, humility, and even remorse. "I followed you," he confessed, glancing toward the dark car waiting nearby. "Not to intimidate you. Not to pressure you. I needed to see you, to speak to you directly. Because firing you through HR, through a letter, through protocol, it wasn't enough. It would never have been enough. You deserved the truth, and I couldn't let it go unsaid." My chest tightened, the raw weight of his words pressing down on me. He wasn't just apologizing. He was exposing himself, admitting a vulnerability few people ever show, least of all a CEO. "And I need to ask something of you," he continued, his gaze steady. "I need you to trust me again. Not because of the company, not because of your position, but because I've learned something that only you can teach me. How to value people, how to see beyond the numbers, how to lead with respect and humanity. I failed you, but I want to do better. I want to make this right." The sincerity in his voice left me momentarily speechless. I thought about all the late nights I had spent working, the weekends sacrificed, the trust one had placed in him. And despite the shock, the betrayal, and the uncertainty, I realized that he wasn't asking me to erase the past. He was asking me to see the future. You really mean that? I finally asked, my voice trembling slightly. Yes, he said simply. I can't change what happened, but I can ensure it never happens again. I need someone I can count on. Someone whose loyalty and integrity aren't just words on a resume. That person is you. I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. It wasn't easy to forgive, and I knew the journey wouldn't be simple. But in that moment, I understood something profound. Mistakes happen, even at the highest levels. What matters is how people respond, how they own those mistakes, how they choose to correct them. And Mr. Caldwell, for all his power, was choosing to correct his. I think I understand, I said finally. And I appreciate your honesty, more than I can put into words. A small, almost relieved smile crossed his face. That's all I ask. Let's move forward, not as boss and employee, but as people who respect each other.
Can we do that?
I nodded slowly. Yes, we can do that. For the first time since the shocking call in his office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The fear, the anger, the confusion, they were still there, yes, but now they were tempered with hope, with possibility, with a sense that perhaps this crisis had been a doorway, not a wall. And in that quiet street, under the soft glow of the streetlights, I realized that this confrontation, this revelation, was about more than a job or a paycheck. It was about respect, integrity, and the rare courage to admit when you are wrong.
It was about humanity.
I never expected my worst day to become my greatest opportunity. The street was quiet, the hum of distant traffic fading into the background, as I realized the truth of what had just happened. What started as the worst moment of my life, being abruptly fired, had turned into a turning point I could never have imagined. Mr. Caldwell stood across from me, his eyes no longer the sharp, distant gaze of a CEO, but filled with something deeper, respect, humility, and a desire to make things right. For the first time, I saw him not as an untouchable executive, but as a human being willing to acknowledge his mistakes and take responsibility. I want you to know, he said, that what happens next is up to you. You can choose to walk away, and I will understand. Or you can choose to stay, and we'll rebuild together. I thought of everything. The late nights, the missed family dinners, the sacrifices that had often felt invisible. I thought of my colleagues who depended on me, the projects I had poured myself into, and the small victories I had celebrated quietly along the way. And I thought of my family, waiting at home, their lives intertwined with mine in ways no job could ever erase. I want to stay, I said finally, my voice steady. Not because I have to, but because I believe in what we can do together. A faint smile broke across his face, one that felt genuine and unguarded. Then let's make sure this is different, he said. We'll do this right, starting now. In the weeks that followed, the transformation was remarkable. Mr. Caldwell didn't just offer me a return to my previous role. He involved me in decisions I had never been part of before. He sought my input on restructuring plans, on team management, on strategies that affected the very core of the company. My voice mattered, and for the first time, I saw a CEO willing to lead not just with authority, but with humility and respect. But it wasn't just about the company. It was about what I had learned, too. I realized that setbacks, no matter how devastating, can carry hidden opportunities. Sometimes, the very events that feel like the end of the world are doors to a new beginning, if we are willing to step through them with courage and trust. One afternoon, as I walked through the office, a colleague approached me with a grin. I heard what happened, he said. I'm glad you're still here. Honestly, I don't know what we would have done without you. I smiled, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with recognition. It was the knowledge that, in facing adversity, I had stayed true to my principles, and that truth had been recognized, even by someone as powerful as the CEO. And then came the moment that truly sealed the change. Mr. Caldwell called me into his office, not for a disciplinary meeting, not for another shocking announcement, but simply to say thank you. I want you to know, he said, leaning back in his chair, that following you that night, it changed me. It reminded me why this business matters, why people matter. You reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. That leadership isn't about power. It's about respect, integrity, and the courage to admit when you are wrong. I felt a lump in my throat. In that moment, the gulf between CEO and employee disappeared. We were two people, flawed but striving, connected by a shared understanding of responsibility, honesty, and human dignity. As I left his office that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope not just for my career, but for the life I was building, the family I was protecting, and the work I could do with purpose and integrity. The firing, the fear, the humiliation, they hadn't destroyed me. They had strengthened me. They had revealed character, both in myself and in the man who had once seemed untouchable behind his office door. And sometimes, the universe has a strange way of turning despair into opportunity. What I thought was the end was actually the beginning. The night I was fired, followed home, and confronted by my CEO became the night everything changed, for the better. I never imagined that 5 minutes of a decision could shake my world so completely. But I also never imagined that those same 5 minutes could lead to the kind of respect, recognition, and opportunity one had always dreamed of. As I walked home that evening, I realized that life doesn't always unfold the way we plan. Sometimes it surprises us. Sometimes it humbles us. And sometimes it gives us exactly what we need in the most unexpected way. I glanced back at the office building in the distance, then forward to my home, where my family waited. And for the first time in days, I felt at peace. Because I knew this. The hardest moments often lead to the greatest victories, and the people who own their mistakes are the ones who create the most meaningful change.